Part 21. Adventurer of the Elf World. Author, Wu Nangkuang Song. Chapter 201. These people are quite creative. After searching a little, I found a thin wooden board that popped out. This time, there were no fancy mechanisms, and I could clearly see what was inside. Gently opened it, and a secret compartment appeared. There were no fancy patterns or other decorations, just a square box. And after opening it, there were several books inside, each as thick as two fingers stacked together. Xiu flipped through it casually, and it was also about studying elves and breeding plans. In addition to these books, there was also a small leather bag with 4 bottles of unknown potions tied to it, and then tied up. Xiu didn't know the details, but it must be an important item to be hidden like this. Anyway, he stuffed everything in the secret compartment into his backpack and carefully restored the mechanism. For the sake of caution, he even used his superpowers to spread the dust again to cover up the traces just now. "Is there anything else I can help you with?" After Xiu packed up, he turned his head and looked at the giant bee that had been beside him. Only he could say this without any psychological burden. He even searched the other person's hometown thoroughly, and asked this. After reconnecting telepathically, Beedrill was able to communicate and exchange with him. "This place has decayed, and I will end." Xiu understood something, frowned slightly, and asked back. "Do you know how the previous gym leader died?" Beedrill shook his head silently, but suddenly transmitted the information. It was him. Xiu felt Drill's thoughts and knew that this matter must be related to the current gym leader. And from Drill's appearance, it seemed that he wanted to explain the funeral affairs and then kill that guy. Xiu sorted out his thoughts in an instant and said, "I don't know why you chose me, but since I have received the benefits, I will definitely do it. I will find a way to deal with the old gym leader. As for you, don't worry, heal your wounds first, and I will give you an explanation." Xiu took the initiative to take this matter for another reason besides taking advantage of others. He liked this gym, or to be more precise, the books here. But it would be very troublesome to bring it back. If he operated it, there would be this opportunity. The giant bee hornet didn't think so. It flapped its wings and wanted to leave to act alone, but was stopped by Xiu. "Wait a minute." As soon as he spoke, Xiu hadn't reacted yet, but the grey bone spear was already against his throat. After a glance at this side, Casey regained his calm look, and didn't have the slightest intention of rushing to fight back. Xiu was surprised that it could still be so strong in this state. How strong was it at its peak? As if it felt Xiu's gaze, the giant bee hornet couldn't help but lift the spear forward again, just touching the skin of Xiu's neck. But Xiu didn't seem to feel the danger. He lowered his head slightly to look at the bone spear, and reached out to stroke it gently. It felt cold and rough, just like its body. The bone spear didn't have the refinement of its youth, and even lost the sharpness it should have. Only the mottled marks on it witnessed its glory, and also showed its loneliness. "I said I would help you. Besides, that person is in the Pokemon Center. Do you want to challenge Joy? You might have the ability when you were young, but now you are old, aren't you?" Xiu felt the hand of Beedrill shaking slightly. It was still old. A sense of sadness surged in his heart, and he sighed and said, "Alas, maybe it is difficult for you to trust humans, but please trust me one last time, I will help you." Xiu let go of his hand, took out the Pokeball again and held it in front of him. The gun that Beedrill had pressed against Xiu's throat finally slowly lowered, and the tip of the gun poked the switch. Watching it turn into red light and return to the Pokeball, Xiu had no intention of staying, and instead cleaned up the traces and disappeared in the inner courtyard. Walking in the morning in Tokiwa City, what happened last night seemed extremely bizarre. But what he needs more now is a peaceful sleep. Back to the Pokemon Center, there were not many changes, and everyone was busy at their own posts. Last night's action was quite a big deal, but it was all carried out in secret. The only people who knew about it were Professor Oak and Miss Joy, except for those who were carrying out the mission. Naturally, no one would welcome this unknown bastard. Only when he returned to the room and closed the door did he feel a little relaxed. He didn't even bother to wash up and fell asleep on the bed. I don't know how long it took. In a daze, Xiu felt something strange. He glanced and found someone standing by the bed. He was so scared that he rolled to the other side and got out of bed. Only then did he see who was coming. It turned out to be Xiao Yuan. "Why are you back?" Xiu sat down on the bed, and the whole person returned to the sleepy look. "Look at what time it is now. You've been sleeping all day." Xiao Yuan rolled his eyes at him and said unhappily, "Why can't you wake me up? If you weren't still breathing, I would have thought you were dead." Xiu was speechless. He glanced at the outside world. It was already dark. He really slept all day. But the groggy feeling in his head was much better. "Tell me what happened today." Xiu quickly regained his usual calmness and asked lightly. Who knew that Xiao Yuan was not in a hurry when she heard what he said, but turned around and walked into the bathroom, then came over with a towel, sat down on the bed and took the towel from his hand, wanting to wipe him, and didn't forget to complain. "Wash your face first, look at you." "I'll do it myself." Xiu just smiled lightly when he heard this, took the warm towel and wiped it randomly, and asked back, "Looking at your appearance, I know you are in a good mood. Those people should have started to sell, right?" Xiao Yuan also knew that she couldn't hide it from the man in front of her, so she roughly told him what happened today. "I thought you guessed wrong. Those people had no intention of selling at all. Until this morning we asked the people who were watching to tell me that there were suddenly a lot more supplies on the market, and the prices were lower than usual." Xiu had told her in detail how to operate before, and Xiao Yuan's execution ability was once again demonstrated, and the price reduction and acquisition were as dirty as possible. After all, there were not many people who could eat these when Pan City was closed. Only because he was connected to Joey, he dared to be so obvious, otherwise this behavior would definitely cause Joey to intervene. "Whatever, I'll leave these things to you." Xiu didn't want to go too deep into this topic. Those merchants stick together when there is profit, but once there is a problem, they will definitely consume each other and lower the price. Adventurer of the Elf World. Author, Wu Nangkuang Song. Chapter 202. This is due to Xiu's continuous pressure these days, and now it forces those people to consider Joey's revenge afterwards. They must rush to empty the warehouse. Whether it was to use the money to run away or to use the money to save lives, it was better than the materials rotting in the warehouse and then being confiscated by Joey. As for losing money, your life is gone, why do you still care about money? Xiao Yuan also noticed that Xiu was thinking about other things, and had no intention of disturbing him. He picked up the towel and stood up. There was a sound from the bathroom. "Would you like to take a shower or eat something first?" "I can do it myself." Xiu Hui came to his senses and stood up to pack his things. At this time, Xiao Yuan poked his head out of the bathroom and asked helplessly when he saw him like this. "Are you going out again tonight?" "Well, I have something else to do," Xiu replied casually, still cleaning the bedding. Xiao Yuan came out and leaned against the wall, looked at Xiu's back, paused for a moment and then said. "Droe came to see you today." "Oh. I also met the little girl from 904. Xiu stopped what he was doing, turned around and looked at Xiao Yuan strangely and asked, "Why did she come to see me?" "It's not a big deal for Droe to find him. Even if there is a problem, Droe's ability can solve it, so it doesn't matter whether he is there or not. But Xiao Chun is a bit special. If anything happens, he will be in trouble." "Shouldn't you explain it to me first?" Xiao Yuan leaned towards Xiu with a serious expression. "Hey, what's the explanation?" Xiu smiled and looked at her strangely. Seeing Xiu like this, Xiao Yuan's face became even more ugly, and he did not stop his approaching steps until he stopped in front of Xiu Shen and looked at him. You didn't tell me anything, whether you knew Daramu or the little girl covered with injuries. At this point, O'Hara obviously lost control of his emotions, and his voice was low and hoarse. And why didn't you tell me about your health problems? Xiu originally thought she was struggling with Xiaokun's problem, but she didn't expect it to be because of this. It should be that Daramu let it slip, and that's why this problem arises. What's there to say about this? These are just interpersonal interactions. It's like I don't care about your personal relationships. Xiu said casually, turned around and was about to continue cleaning up, but unexpectedly, Xiao Yuan hugged him directly. Feeling the tightening feeling in his waist and the low sobbing behind him, Xiu couldn't help but froze, looking a little embarrassed. Why are you hiding it from me? Do you know how scared I am? I'm really afraid that you won't wake up. Hearing this, Xiu became more and more helpless. He broke off her hand and turned around, pushing her down to sit on the edge of the bed. Then he complained, looking at you like this, people who don't know better would think that I'm dead. As for that. Xiao Yuan remained silent, staring at him with a pair of eyes filled with inexplicable emotion. It seemed that she must be very angry without having to guess. Seeing her like this, Xiu smashed her mouth and said casually. I still have 15 years left, and I'm not going to die soon. What are you afraid of? 15 years, what do you mean 15 years? When Xiao Yuan heard this, the stubborn expression on his face instantly collapsed, and he looked at him with confusion. Oops. When Xiu saw O'Hara's expression, he knew something was wrong. Droe definitely didn't mention the exact number of years, but he just imagined that she knew everything and let it slip. What did Droe say? Xiu asked tentatively, carefully observing O'Hara's expression. He just said you were too tired and needed a good rest. Obara obviously hadn't recovered yet, and answered Xiu's questions mechanically. When Xiu heard this, he wanted to slap himself twice. Are you the only one smart? Did Droe leak it? I didn't expect the clown to be myself. Oh, that's okay, I have to leave beforehand. Xiu smiled and stood up to leave, but was pulled down by Obara. Don't leave. Explain clearly first. Xiao Yuan seemed to have noticed something, and every move he made was filled with inexplicable panic. Xiu sat helplessly opposite her, knowing very well that there was no room for maneuver in this matter, so he just lay there and died. It's hard to tell you in detail about this matter. Anyway, I will probably live to be 30. How could it be? This is impossible, there must be a way, there must be a way. When Xiu said this, Xiao Yuan was completely stunned. He was muttering something to himself, his eyes were gray, as if they had lost focus. My hands felt helpless and trembling. Originally, she just learned from Droe that Xiu had been working at a high intensity these days, and she was worried about his physical condition due to his inability to wake up. She just didn't expect to hear such a piece of news again, which was simply unacceptable to her. What are you doing? Xiu looked at the bewildered Xiao Yuan and couldn't help complaining, it's not like you can only live 15 years, why do you seem more scared than me? Asshole, Xiao Yuan pulled Xiu over and asked, how could you leave me alone again? Calm down first, I'm not dead yet. Xiu was inexplicably irritated, but he couldn't lose his temper and could only try his best to comfort him. I know you are worried about me, but you must stay calm and listen to me first. Don't be angry. Seeing Xiu's irritable look, Xiao Yuan couldn't help but suppress the surging emotions in his heart, but there was still worry hidden in his eyes. Actually, things are not as simple as you think. It's not that I really only have 15 years to live. That's just the theory. But in fact, there is still room for maneuver. Living to 40 or 50 is not a problem, so I just left Jianhong City and came here to find a way to save my life, do you understand? Yes, Xiao Yuan nodded, but no one knew whether she understood. I need to find a way to save my life. I don't have much time to take care of the company's affairs, so I leave the company in your hands. But don't worry, what I promised you will definitely be completed. You don't have to think too much. Just do your own thing and help me manage the company. As he spoke, Xiu's face became serious. He patted Xiao Yuan's shoulder solemnly, and said, "The thing I worry about the most is you. Your methods are still too immature, your character has not yet settled down, and your most important strength is illusory. Even if I disappear for a while, you will still be in trouble." Thinking of his previous actions, he only complained about Xiu, but did not think of Xiu's efforts for this. Whether it was investigation, arrangement, or the most difficult loan, he completed it alone, but he did not do his part well. Work is indeed a drag. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Adventurer of the Elf World. Author, Wu Nangkuang Song. Chapter 203. I won't let you down again. You are still young and there is still a chance. Besides, when I die, the company will be yours, so you should be happy. What did you say? Xiao Yuan was very troubled by his unconventional thinking, but she could do nothing about it. Xiu didn't care much, but changed the topic and talked about random things, which completely led her thinking astray. Xiu finally escaped from the room, looked at the door behind him with some fear, and ran away at a faster pace. Are you there? Xiu knocked on Xiao Chun's door, and the door was opened soon. Xiu pushed the door in without hesitation, and the whole person was relieved. Xiao Chun looked at Xiu's strange appearance and was a little curious. I'm fine. Xiu certainly noticed her gaze and guessed what she meant. He waved his hand and walked inside, not forgetting to ask, "What do you want to see me for?" Xiao Chun pointed to the wound on her body, and Xiu realized that it was time to change the dressing. I was confused in sleep, sorry. Xiu stopped in the living room, sat down casually, then took out the medicine props and waved at her. Come here. Xiao Chun stood in front of Xiu, and pulled up her clothes, revealing the bandaged wound. Xiu's hands were still very steady, and he quickly finished the treatment, and then he said, "Eat more of the nutritional paste I gave you. This thing will help recovery. It looks like it will be almost healed in 2 days. By then, you can take a good bath, change into new clothes, and say goodbye to the past completely." For some reason, Xiu laughed out loud, looking a little silly. Xiao Chun looked at him silently, put down her clothes, took out a small notebook and handed it over. Sure, the doctor is always quick to do things. Xiu took it and opened it. When he saw the photo on it, his smile became even brighter. Xiao Chun carefully observed Xiu's appearance, and the corners of her mouth twitched, as if she was learning something. But her expression on her face was still a little stiff. Xiu looked at the information on it. The basic information was very complete. Professor Oak always did things so perfectly. Closing the certificate, Xiu handed it over, and with a smile on his face, he gently shouted, "Xiao Chun, you are now Xiao Chun who was born in Tokiwa City." Xiao Chun seemed to feel something, took the certificate with both hands and held it in her hands. Looking at each other, Xiu saw that the muscles on her face trembled slightly, but the corners of her mouth could not be pulled up. Xiu reached out and stroked her short hair, smiling and comforting her. "Don't force yourself, relax. Laughter is the external expression of internal emotions, radiating from the inside out. Your life has just begun. Go and feel your new life, and you will naturally laugh when the time comes." Xiao Chun nodded thoughtfully. Her little face was a little silly. Xiu couldn't help but giggle, which made her more curious. Okay, I have something to do later, let me borrow the bathroom first. Just now, I was busy fooling Xiao Yuan and didn't care about those details, so I just packed up and ran out. I haven't taken care of myself yet, so of course I can't go out in this state. Prepare food and let Casey and the others out, and he went into the bathroom here. Ah! Xiu lay in the bathtub, and the whole person turned into a salted fish. The configuration of this luxurious room is good, and the bathroom in his small room can't even fit a bathtub. But not long after he lay down, the bathroom door was pushed open, and Xiu knew who came in when he heard the gentle footsteps. Xiu didn't even think about moving, his body was still lying in the bathtub, and he turned his head and glanced at her after noticing her gaze. "What are you doing?" Xiao Chun didn't look embarrassed at all, just stood by the bathtub and watched. Xiu was a little speechless, and didn't know what she was going to do, so he could only shout outside. "Kathy, help me." With telepathy connected, Xiu could clearly feel what she meant. "I'll help you take a bath. It's numb." Xiao Kun's words directly confused him. "Eh?" No, Xiu looked at her strangely and asked, "Are you copying Kathy's memory again? Isn't it? You often take a bath together. You are a human, Kathy and the others are elves, how can this be the same?" Xiu was really stupid, this guy had no common sense at all, even more outrageous than Xiao Yuan. "Did I do something wrong?" His Xiu took a breath and muttered, "I should be the one asking you this." But Xiu didn't just say that, instead he quickly adjusted his mood. "We have time now. Go sit outside and I'll teach you some common sense." Xiao Chun went out obediently, while Xiu lay in the bathtub and used telepathy to explain the correct common sense to her remotely. Half an hour later, Xiu found Dr. Oak in neat clothes. "Why are you looking at me like that?" Dr. Oak was a little surprised by Xiu's weird eyes. Xiu could only smile helplessly and shook his head to explain, "Nothing, it's my own problem." After all, we can't blame Xiao Yuan's problem on Dr. Oak. "You look really scary when you're asleep, you should also pay attention to your own body." I know Xiu didn't care about this topic and asked instead, "What's the situation?" "That person rescued, but not awake yet." Dr. turned to look at Xiu, frowning slightly, "But you have achieved your idea, and now they are in chaos, you have made a lot of money." "Doctor, let's take a look at these things first." Xiu picked out those that could be used as evidence. Upon seeing this, Dr. also focused on this. With his brain, he quickly guessed what happened, but he could only sigh. "I'm going to take it to Miss Joy. Does the doctor want to go?" Xiu calmly packed up those things. As for Dr. Why did he still have such thoughts? He raised his hand, waved it, and said casually, "Go ahead." After leaving here, Xiu went directly to Miss Joy with his things. "These things are not enough." Miss Joy briefly browsed through them. "These can only prove the participation of the owner of the museum, but cannot rip off those people behind." "That's enough. Those people are not clean at all. They can't grasp how much evidence we have. Now they are scrambling to shirk it, the more evidence will be exposed. I believe that with Miss Joy's methods, as long as there is an excuse to investigate them, it's not up to you, Miss Joy, to find out anything." Xiu said, pulling out a sack and casually said, "More than 7 million are all here." Miss Joy seemed to notice something strange about Xiu and asked back, "What do you want?" Adventurer of the Elf World. Author, Wu Nangkuang Song. Chapter 204. "I want the life of the gym and the gym leader," Xiu said bluntly, without any intention of hiding it. "Why?" Miss Joy realized that Xiu might not be just Professor Oak's assistant. Because of this, Xiu took out the Drill's pokeball. Miss Joy has been in charge of Joy's business in Viridian City for so long, how could she not recognize what the pokeball represents, and couldn't help asking, "Who are you?" "I am the heir of the Bimang Gym." After Xiu left Miss Joy, he was led by Joycine to another place. Joycine was more curious about Xiu. After all, She didn't know why Miss Joy's attitude towards him had changed more, and judging from her experience as an assistant for so many years, he was definitely not an ordinary assistant. "I heard that you were tired." The two walked in the quiet corridor, and Joy Seeing asked tentatively. "It's okay, just a little tired," Shiu said a little perfunctorily, but Joy Seeing followed this topic and talked to herself. "Now all our people are working overtime at high intensity, and 3 of them have collapsed at their posts." Xiao Yuxing's fatigue, which she dared not show in front of her superiors, was also revealed. Her straight back began to bend, and she complained, "I feel that it's almost the same. I haven't had a good sleep in the past few days. Thank you for your hard work these days." Hearing Xiao Yuxing's words, Xiu's expression couldn't help but fluctuate a little more. It must be said that the Pokemon Center has strong organizational capabilities. Their people are really dedicated and very reliable, and their professional capabilities are also worthy of recognition. The two chatted about this issue all the way until they came to a special ward. Although the Pokemon Center is famous for treating Pokemon, it also has a technical foundation for humans. And there is no place safer than here. "The person is inside." Xiao Yuxing stood aside, obviously not intending to follow him in. Xiu nodded silently, and then walked in, while Xiao Yuxing stopped outside. The structure of the ward is very simple, but it is just some equipment and a bed, on which lies a person with a life support device. Xiu looked calm, threw the pokeball backhand, released Casey, and said lightly, "Let's see what's going on with this guy." After saying that, he closed his eyes, and Casey beside him still looked the same. On the contrary, the instrument detecting data on the bed began to alarm, and Xiao Yuxing, who was outside, was shocked when she heard it, but she could only hold back her curiosity and wait outside. After more than 10 minutes, the alarm finally stopped, and before Xiao Yuxing could react more, the door was opened and Xiu walked out. "I'm a little busy, so I won't go to visit those tired staff members. Please help me go over and see them," Xiu said and handed the 3 bottles of Moo Moo milk and fruit in his hand to Xiao Yuxing. Xiao Yuxing didn't react to Xiu's words, but the heavy feeling in his hand was very real. As for this person, Xiu looked back, his expression clearly showing a hint of disdain. "He's still alive, but that's all." Huh. Joey Seeing didn't understand what was going on, and glanced inside to make sure the machine was still working. But when she turned around, Xiu had turned around the corner and disappeared, leaving Xiao Yi Seeing standing there stupidly. She didn't know why Xiu was in a hurry to do something, and what she had in her hand. Fortunately, she still remembered Miss Joy's instructions, and after checking it out, she turned around and left to report back. In the night, Xiu came to the gym again. The difference from yesterday was that all the broken limbs and arms disappeared, but the blood that seeped into the ground could not be removed, and there was still a faint smell of blood. Xiu ignored all the mess, walked directly to the inner courtyard, and released the giant bee from it. "I have helped you investigate clearly, and you can see the specific situation yourself." Xiu looked at Casey beside him. Telepathy connected them together, and the information Xiu obtained was also transmitted with his thoughts. The death of the previous gym leader was indeed related to him, which was an extremely ridiculous thing. The current gym leader is named Kita. When he was a child, his family was in financial difficulties, so he was sent to the gym as an apprentice. He grew up in the gym. This person also has some talent and is quite loved by the teacher. When he was 16 years old, he was promoted from an apprentice to a member of the gym, focusing on the study of trainers, instead of becoming a handyman with those apprentices who did not complete the assessment. When he was 30 years old, he was recommended by his teacher to join the corps. Originally, his teacher had the opportunity to compete for the position of gym leader, but he was not as good as the old gym leader and failed to get this position. Later, he died of depression because of this. As soon as the teacher died, their faction lost its pillar. This guy did not take into account the teacher's feelings, and did not even pretend to do it. The next day, he did not hesitate to switch to the old gym leader's faction. This matter made everyone have opinions, but no matter what, the old gym leader needed internal stability, so he suppressed this matter. After a few years, the old gym leader is already in his 70s and needs to pass on the position, along with the real secret of the gym. Although Kita is somewhat smart, he is not smart enough to use his intelligence. Compared with the few successors who are really trained in the gym, his strength is just a rookie. And because of his previous actions, he is also looked down upon by everyone. However, he has no intention of competing, and he stays in the gym honestly. At this time, the old gym owner died suddenly without any signs, and even the cause of death could not be found. Kita didn't know what happened. Anyway, the gym suddenly exploded, and the inheritance was suddenly broken, which meant that the gym's highest combat power was the old gym owner's Pokemon. Since then, there have been constant internal struggles around the old gym owner's Pokemon. In the end, either they left or died, and the gym fell apart. At this time, the last successor holding the Beedrill Pokeball died inexplicably again. After this chaos, there were only a few cats left in the gym, and Kita's seniority was surprisingly high. At this time, an idea that he had never thought of before came to his mind. He contacted his confidants and seized the gym in one fell swoop. However, he had no idea how to run it, and his strength was average. In just a few years, the gym declined rapidly and had to sell land to maintain it. After watching the whole thing, Xiu also understood some things. This Kita was just a pawn. The other party used the position of gym leader to stir up internal fighting, killed several heirs, and then pushed him up. It was because he was a waste that he survived. Adventurer of the Elf World. Author, Wu Nangkuang Song. Chapter 205. The reason why this parallel importer closed the inner courtyard and sealed the library was actually because he was afraid that someone who was more powerful than him would rebel against him. And his operation also ruined the last hope of the gym until he could repair it. The old gym leader has worked hard for the gym all his life, and he had already made arrangements to divide the inheritance of the gym into two parts. One part is the hard work of past gym owners, that is, the things Xiu found in the study room. Among them are the secrets of the Bee Mang Gym and the cultivation method of Speed Giant Needle Bee, but there is only one corresponding potion in it. There is no recipe. The other one is naturally the box that Xiu got from the tree, which contains the detailed formula of the medicine. The old man also had good intentions. This arrangement can prevent them from being stolen together. Even if one of them is lost, it will not affect the survival of the gym. He was afraid that there would be problems with the inheritance, so he specially kept a potion as a sample, for fear that the people behind him would not understand. But in the end, the gym changed drastically overnight, and the inheritance was completely cut off, which was quite tragic when you think about it. Xiu gathered his thoughts and slowly opened his eyes, and said to the giant needle bee. He was just a puppet who was pushed up. He was not the person who directly killed the old owner. I have already given him the corresponding punishment. You don't need to worry about it anymore. In fact, Xiu didn't know much about the real murderer, but the mastermind behind the scenes thought of one person. The man who swallowed Changpan, Ban Mu. As for doing this, it is estimated that only Ban Mu of Team Rocket can do this. If he wants to monopolize Viridian City, he must take action against the two original gyms. In this way, it makes sense how Ban Mu, a ground-type gym expert, could get a giant needle bee. According to this calculation, I am afraid that Ban Mu only got the potion in the study, otherwise it should be cultivated on a large scale. At least there should not be only one such a strong giant needle wasp. It's just that it's easier for him now. The needle bee seemed to still be digesting the information, but it could indeed feel a sadness spreading from the bottom of its heart. The already lifeless posture became even older, and the aura flickered and faded. Don't worry, I've saved the gym for you. Since I've accepted your benefits, I won't watch him end it. Xiu's words temporarily pulled it back from the hands of death. The inheritance of this gym has not completely disappeared. The roots are in his hands. When the time comes, he will choose a successor and throw him into study for 2 years. Will he come out stronger than this idiot Kita? Thank you. The aura of the giant needle bee gradually calmed down, and it conveyed its gratitude to Xiu. I don't know why you chose to believe in me in the first place, but I will never disappoint those who believe in me. What you have to do now is to live as long as possible so that you can see the results you want. After retracting the needle bee into the elf ball, Xiu stood alone in front of the ancient tree and looked up. Originally, the giant needle bees in the gym lived in trees, starting from unicorn worms and evolving into iron-shelled pupae and then to the giant needle bees. In the whole process, as the successor of the gymnasium cultivation, you need to select your own giant needle bee, then go up and down the tree every day, feed the horned beetles special materials, cultivate feelings, etc. They will not come down until they become the complete body of the giant stipe bee, and participate in cultivation, training, combat, and other projects. This process also contains some unique skills of the gym. The ancient trees are still luxuriant, but the grand occasion of the year has long since disappeared, and now only one of these special giant needle bees is dead. Alas! Xiu sighed, but suddenly he seemed to feel something and suddenly turned his head to look over. That glance shone dimly in the dark night, like a hungry wolf looking back, exuding ferocity and cruelty. Casey also wanted to chase after him, but was stopped by Xiu. Forget it, looking at it from such a distance, I don't have much courage, I'm just a rat. But there are indeed many people staring at this place. Come over and check as soon as something happens. Is the situation still unclear? Are you playing this with me? Xiu didn't pay too much attention at all, the most important things were already in his hands. After that, he walked directly into the inner courtyard. He wanted to see if the other party dared to come again. Jaban City Spirit Center office. Joey Seen was explaining to Miss Joey with the inspection report in his hand. The suspect Kita has woken up and admitted to training trainers for the evil forces when questioned. After a long investigation transcript, I took another sentence. Kita's spine is now broken and he has lost feeling below the neck. There is no possibility of standing up again. He can only lie in bed for the rest of his life. After saying that, Joey paused for a moment, leaned towards Miss Joey and asked, "Who is this cultivator? How dare you do this?" She didn't finish her words, but she was obviously asking why Xiu dared to permanently disable a person Miss Joy wanted to protect in the elf center under her watch. He is much more at ease than you in doing things. He obviously understands that only by cutting off Kita's hope of survival can he drag those people down. Miss Joy glanced at her assistant strangely, with a slight smile on her face. This kind of person will never settle down. You will definitely come into contact with him again in the future, but don't embarrass our Joey. Joy was a little confused when faced with her boss's teasing. It was rare to see her so relaxed these days. It was obviously caused by that Xiu. As for Kita, clearly within the trading range. Library in the inner courtyard of Fengmang Taoist Hall. Xiu woke up early in the morning, and his headache was completely relieved. The books on the bookshelves were cleared, leaving only a few empty shelves. This is the essence of the gym's inheritance, and now it's all in his pocket. Xiu pushed open the door, greeted the gentle morning light, and couldn't help but smile, shouting to the sky, "Today! Another day full of hope." He came out to the ancient tree to stretch his body a little, and then prepared breakfast for a few elves here. The giant bee needs a long-term hibernation to extend its lifespan, so it comes out to eat once in a while, instead of coming out every day like Casey and the others. Today, Xiu swept away the haze of the past, and solved the problems that had been weighing on him for many days. At this moment, he no longer needs to worry about those messy things, and he can finally rest for a while. Come. Hug Xiu picked up the little lucky egg and rubbed his face against it. The environment was a bit bad during this period, and Xiu didn't dare to let it out in front of Joey, the monopoly of the lucky egg, for fear that it would have problems. Now I can finally play with it for a while. Little Fuden couldn't accept it, and stretched out his hand to push it towards his face, but it obviously had no effect. Even if it squeezed Xiu's face crooked, it couldn't stop Xiu from rubbing against it. Now he just wants to eat. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Adventurer of the Elf World. Author, Wu Nangkuang Song. Chapter 206. After playing with them for a while, Xiu sat under the tree and read a book. And Casey controlled the teeth of the rata to grind on the grindstone continuously, making strange sounds. As for it, it was suspended in the air with its legs crossed and its eyes closed. It was unknown whether it was meditating or doing something else. The giant claw mantis was still repeating the boring punch, as if it still ignored everything around it, and the only target was what was in front of it, and then punched. Only Xiao Fuden was lying lazily on the ground. After eating, it was the most comfortable to sleep in the sun. They were enjoying a good time here, but the whole Changpan city was in chaos. Joey, who got the evidence, really showed the terrifying power. One by one, the big figures who used to call the wind and rain in Changpan City were invited to the Pokemon Center, but they only went in and never came out. The panic gradually spread to the upper class of Changpan City. For a time, the people above were panicked, and the people below watched the show and ate melons. Xiu looked up at the sky, then stood up and twisted his neck. It's almost time. After putting several elves back into the elf balls, Xiu stood up and left the inner courtyard. Walking on the street, there were more people coming and going, and those who looked like tourists also came out to walk around, without the depression of the past. With Xiu's efforts, ordinary people and tourists no longer had a direct source of conflict, so it was naturally impossible for them to have conflicts. Now Xiu has transferred the conflicts to those superior people. Ordinary people don't even have time to eat melons, so how can they cause trouble? And with this, some normal business activities have also begun, and everyone is slowly returning to the prosperity of the past. Seeing this situation, Xiu also had a smile on his face. With such public opinion, the ideas of those who have intentions are basically useless. What's more, Joey's tough investigation will definitely deter those who want to cause trouble. Xiu gradually came to a place he had been to once before, the small forest. Just hearing some noisy sounds outside, Xiu smiled slightly, and then walked in. Going in along the path, Xiu heard those sounds more and more clearly, and he didn't care about pretending, and felt to speed up his pace. When he entered, he saw a pair of people in uniform standing on the grass in front of the mansion. Their elves had been released. Obviously, the situation was not that simple. Standing opposite the team was a tall middle-aged man with a gloomy face, and in front of him was a child. The voice just now was obviously the child shouting at the official people. "Hey, hey, hey. What are you doing?" Xiu raised his hand towards that side, and his steps could not help but speed up a bit, walking to the middle of the two sides to separate them. "Captain, good morning," Xiu smiled and greeted, then looked at the other side and asked. "What happened?" "This is the gym leader of Changpan City." "Sir, we are just following the order to ask the Emerald Gym leader to go back for questioning." The leader said something very official, but Xiu smiled slightly, turned to look at the tall man, nodded slightly at him, and greeted, "We have met Mr. Gym leader." The tall man frowned and pursed his lips when he saw Xiu's attitude. The child responded after hearing Xiu's words. I remember you, you've been here before. The middle-aged man took his hand off the child's shoulder, as if he wanted him to stop talking and protect him at the same time. The captain on the side was not so fancy and urged him in a hurry. Please come back with us, if there is no problem, we will let you go after the investigation. The child was furious when he heard this, with an angry expression on his face. You are all bad guys. You can't arrest your father. Xiu laughed out loud when he saw this, breaking the originally serious scene, squatting down and asking the child, if your father has no problem, why are you afraid to go over and be investigated? We didn't do anything bad. Just as the child was about to say something, the man pulled him behind him to protect him, and said, I'll go with you, this matter has nothing to do with my son. The captain didn't waste any words and was about to take the middle-aged man away. But at this time, Xiu stood up and blocked the two of them. Hey, Xiu raised his hand and pressed towards the team leader. Personally, I still want to believe that the owner has nothing to do with these things. Don't rush to go back. I'll talk to the owner first. You guys have been busy for a long time. How about going in and taking a rest first? As he said this, Xiu looked at the owner again. The smile on his face was very standard, but a little creepy. The owner raised his eyebrows, but soon turned around with a little helplessness. Please come in. The child was obviously a little dissatisfied, but he didn't say anything. He followed with a puffed face. Last time he couldn't go in, but this time he could walk in with a swagger. Xiu strolled and observed the environment here. Now there are constant disputes outside, and coupled with the summer heat, the whole city is in an inexplicable irritability. But here the plants are lush and surrounded by green. The whole mansion seems to be isolated from the world, revealing a rare tranquility. What a good place! Xiu looked at the extremely well-preserved ancient building and couldn't help but admire it. Compared to the desolate and dilapidated inner courtyard, this place is much better. The owner led everyone inside. Xiu glanced at the lobby and said, Brothers, please sit here for a while. I will have a good talk with the owner. Yes, the captain answered, and then directed his companions to sit in the lobby. These people acted in a straightforward manner, but it can be seen that he was still in the official stage, and what he meant was straightforward and clear. The owner did not say much when he saw this, and patted the child gently. Go, serve tea to everyone. He looked at Xiu and raised his hand to the front. Please come here. Xiu walked in casually and came to the room on the other side under the guidance of the owner. It was a very simple room, with a table in the middle and a set of tea sets on it. Please sit down. The middle-aged man sat down and began to fiddle with the tea sets. I've heard of the gym owner a long time ago. Among the 3 gyms in Viridian City, the Emerald Gym has the best reputation and is also the most disciplined. It has never bullied ordinary people or looked down on ordinary trainers, so I don't believe that this incident has anything to do with your family. But although I believe in the gym owner, the other 2 gyms in Viridian City have problems. Miss Joy takes it very seriously, so she asked the gym owner to go and accept the investigation. She just hopes to clear the gym owner's name and has no ill intentions. Xiu made up for his face with just a few words. The middle-aged man also realized that Xiu was difficult to deal with, but he just continued his actions and served tea to Xiu. Please. Adventurer of the Elf World. Author, Wu Nangkuang Song. Chapter 207. Xiu looked at the teacup in front of him, took it with a smile, but did not intend to move it. He just placed it in front of him and continued. We are all smart people, so I will say it directly. As long as you can promise me one thing to prove yourself, I can help you communicate with Joey. The man knew the key point and started, looking up at Xiu. His expression was calm. We need only one gym in Changpan City. Xiu raised his hand and knocked on the table. saying it word by word. The gym owner's expression relaxed when he heard this, and he sighed and said, "Don't worry, I will withdraw." Xiu felt something was wrong when he heard this, and asked again. "Has anyone asked you to withdraw from Changpan City before?" The gym owner also knew that the situation was set, and he did not mean to cover it up, so he said it directly. "Those people came to me before the celebration, but my family will not participate in those things." The middle-aged man knew that he must agree, because those people really contacted him, and if Miss Joey wanted to manipulate him, he would have no way to escape. It's better to agree to it. Anyway, I have no intention to participate in those things. It's just right to withdraw, so that my son's safety can be guaranteed. No, no, no. Xiu shook his head thoughtfully. Maybe the gym owner misunderstood us. When Xiu said this, the middle-aged man's expression was a little wrong. Anything involving a turning point represents trouble. Is it not okay if I want to withdraw? Xiu smiled and explained, the gym owner obviously misunderstood. What we said about only having one gym is not to ask you to close the gym. On the contrary, you are the only gym in Changpan City that has been certified by the Alliance. Why? The middle-aged man looked a little solemn. Because the Bimang gym was gone when the previous owner took over, the current one is just occupied by the criminal Kita, but because he helped Team Rocket train, he has been imprisoned and is awaiting trial. As for the Earth Gym, the owner and all the staff are missing, and now it is believed that they are either dead or evading responsibility. In any case, the qualification of this gym is definitely lost. That is to say, after this incident, you are the only one left in the Tokiwa City Gym. The middle-aged man couldn't help but show a trace of sadness on his face when he heard this. It only took a few days for 2 gyms to fall, and you have to know that these are gyms certified by the Alliance. If I had agreed to those people, I'm afraid it wouldn't be him who came today. Originally, according to the rules, you must be asked to go back, but I have learned about your gym and know that you are unlikely to participate in this matter. Although you didn't come forward to help the official maintain order and assume your responsibilities as a gym, you still did a good job in abiding by the rules, so I pleaded with Miss Joy to give you a chance, and also give the Emerald Gym a chance. What do you want me to do? Stand up and assume your responsibilities as a gym. Xiu knocked on the table and pushed the teacup slightly forward, and the middle-aged man's eyes were also on the teacup. The middle-aged man didn't rush to answer, but fiddled with the tea sets again, but his expression was hesitant. Xiu's words sounded nice, but in fact he was forcing him to stand in line. The meaning is, if you stand up now, we won't pursue your previous slacking off and not taking responsibility, and your contact with certain people. Otherwise, you will be in big trouble if you are investigated. After all, if he, as a gymnasium member, had come forward to stand on Joey's side in that situation, the situation would have been much better. This is the reputation accumulated in Viridian City for 100 years. But he shrank back and chose not to stand on either side. In fact, he stood on both sides and was a fence-sitter. It is normal for such behavior to be liquidated afterwards. But only one giant bee was left in the Bimang Gym, and Sakeka's Earth Gym simply disappeared and ran away. He was the only one left in Viridian City. As for the old boy Ban Muo, he was arranged by Xiu. He whispered a lot of bad things in Miss Joey's ears. After this matter, the license of the Earth Gym must be taken off. Both Xiu and Joey knew that Viridian City must have a gym. Logically, Xiu now has Joey's support, and it is the best choice for Xiu to re-establish the Bimang Gym as the heir. But Xiu refused this. He didn't want to waste time on the gym, and he had a lot of troubles. There are only 3 gyms in Viridian City, so there is only one last choice. Xiu also thinks that the Emerald Green Gym is the best choice, because this gym does not fight for anything. It has been like a big tree growing silently for 100 years. Although it is not well known in the outside world, It has a very good reputation in Changpan City. Joey's winning him over will be beneficial to the future development and arrangements. Moreover, although the situation is clear at this time, it has not yet shown an absolute advantage, and there are still many people who are waiting and watching. When the emerald green gym stands on Joey's side and someone takes the lead, there will be more people leaning towards Joey. So Xiu, as the proposer and an interested party, came to persuade, and it was also in the plan. But fiddling with the tea set can't delay much time. The middle-aged man knew that if he stood up now, he would definitely be caught in the struggle between the two sides, but it seemed that there was not much possibility of getting out of it under the current situation. Let alone whether this century-old family business would become a sacrifice, it was difficult to guarantee the safety of his son alone. Of course Xiu noticed the other party's hesitation and said with a smile, "Don't worry, gym leader, we don't need you to do anything. We just need you to do the job that the gym should do and jointly maintain the peace and stability of Jobin City." What Xiu and Joey like is that he is not meddlesome, does not cause trouble, and is honest enough. Moreover, with the family as a bond, there will be no tragedies like the one in the Fengmang gym, and it is stable enough. It's just that the middle-aged man didn't show much intention towards Xiu's words, and he still looked confused. Obviously he knew that things were not as simple as Xiu said, so he couldn't agree too easily. Whether you agree or not is up to the gym leader. If you don't agree, I will take people out of the gym now to avoid causing trouble to everyone. I have to go somewhere else. As for the owner, he can continue to stay here with peace of mind. Xiu Ke has never been a good person. If you say good things to someone in front of you, you can't blame him if he doesn't listen. The middle-aged man's expression changed slightly when he heard this. He understood that no matter whether he agreed or not, when Xiu led the team out, those people and forces who paid attention to changes in the situation and were extremely sensitive to everything would default to Joey's side. Otherwise, why are so many people arrested, and you are the only one who is fine? Adventurer of the Elf World. Author, Wu Nangkuang Song. Chapter 211. He disrupted public order and dared to directly threaten a working Elf Center staff member. I now suspect that there is something wrong with him. You can take him down and have a closer look. Xiaoya didn't mean to waste time on him, so he let go of him. But what he said really shocked the young man, and as he let go, he lost support and fell to the ground. Before he could react, the two men had already seized him and dragged him out. I just jumped in line. Listening to the gradually weakening wailing in the background, Xiu curled his lips and didn't pay too much attention. Hello, what do you need? The attitude of the staff has obviously changed a lot, with smiles on their faces. Noticing her gaze, Xiu smiled and nodded slightly. Thank you for your hard work. I want these, please. Xiu simply ordered some things and left. He supplies all the staple food in the Elf Center restaurant. He has been there several times these days when arranging supplies, and those people all know him. He had just found Dramu in the corner of the restaurant, and before he could sit down, he heard the old man's teasing. Ha, okay, why didn't I know you had such a sense of justice before? Doctor, don't laugh at me. Xiu sat down and shook his head in embarrassment, then took out the fruit he had saved and handed it over. I'm not laughing at you. I also wanted to be like you, but it's a pity that I never had the chance. Dramu took the fruit casually, and the smile on his face could not be concealed at all. But it seemed like he had no intention of hiding it. Xiu knew that Droe meant that after he became famous, he would be restricted in everything he did and could not do whatever he wanted. But when has Xiu this mouth ever suffered a loss? He also teased Dramu a few words. It's easier for you to take action. As long as you take off the mask, who around you will dare to talk nonsense? Why do you need to be as troublesome as me? Of course Dro could hear Xiu's teasing, but he could only laugh along with it. The past few days have been really depressing, but now the situation is improving, and the atmosphere in the whole city seems a little more relaxed. The two of them were chatting while eating, with casual words and laughter surrounding this place. Dromu also collected wool from Xiu's body and got a lot of fruits for after-dinner snacks. Good guy, you are a greedy chinchilla. You have hoarded so many things and you still don't help me. Haha, I thought doctors and big shots like you all ate big meals, but all I ate while wandering around outside for 2 days was bread. After a brief lunch here, Xiaobian and Dromu went back upstairs. He also wanted to check on Xiao Chun. It was too much to leave her alone. When he passed by, he found Xiao Chun holding the variety monster. Only then did Xiu remember something and said to her, "By the way, why did I forget the rations for the variety monster?" He had left supplies before, but he forgot that she also had an elf. As he spoke, Xiu took out some different types of rations from his backpack. Thinking of it, Xiu was quite curious about the structure of the variety monster. After getting Xiao-kun's consent, Xiu took over the variety monster. This thing is just a ball of purple viscous substance. The only thing special is a pair of small eyes, like small black dots. The mouth narrows into a line when it is closed. You can't tell it unless you look carefully. It feels like a big water balloon in the hand, but a little tougher. It has a good temper and does not resist or make violent movements when repairing the hand. It just squirms slightly, which feels very strange. Xiu took some rations and fed it a little. It accepted everything that came to it and swallowed it directly without chewing. Xiu teased it and found that its IQ didn't seem to be very high, and it tended to act more instinctively. "Can you turn it into something and show it to me?" Xiu studied it for a long time and didn't see anything special, so he turned to Xiao Chun and asked. Xiao Chun didn't say anything. He put his hand to his mouth and whistled. The variety monster that was rubbing in Xiu's hand immediately reacted. Then he followed Xiao Yuan to take the variety monster and put it in front of a teapot. Immediately afterwards, a magical scene happened. The body of the variety monster changed for a while, and the purple color on his body began to gradually fade, and finally turned into a white porcelain teapot. Xiu studied it and found that they were almost the same in terms of shape and color. He picked up the two teapots and weighed them, and found that one of them was obviously heavier, and he also found strange little eyes on the inner wall of the teapot. After turning into something, Xiu found that this little guy seemed a little shy. As long as he stared into its eyes, he would find a way to look away. But because it has become like this, it is difficult to move like it was just now, so it looks very funny. Interesting. Xiu found it quite interesting. Seeing Xiu like this, Xiao Chun seemed to want to show off the real strength of the variety monster, so he whistled again. The variety monster softened on the spot in Xiu's hand, and then clung to his hand like a slime. Xiao Chun took the variety monster back into his hand, and it climbed up his arm and then got into his clothes. Xiu was still curious about what this was doing, but the next second he saw the purple fluid extending from her neck, then getting thinner and thinner, and finally wrapped around Xiao Chun's face. But something even more outrageous happened. The things on his face gradually changed. The original faceless mass of flesh gradually highlighted his facial features, and the color gradually matched his normal skin color. Soon a face that was obviously different from Xiao Chun appeared. And the body shape, shoulder width, etc. have also changed. When Qiu Zhen saw it, he originally thought it was just breast enlargement, but he didn't expect it to be plastic surgery plus plastic surgery. "Can I touch you?" Xiu looked at this man with a rare look of longing on his face. Xiao Chun had no intention of resisting, and looked at Xiu like this after nodding slightly. After getting the consent, Xiu couldn't help but reach out and touch it. Not to mention, the skin texture was simulated very well, but the pores were still exposed. Xiu gently pinched her face and high shoulders, and found that the feel was not much different from normal muscles, just a little softer. Because Xiao Chun has been trained, Her body has high muscle density and low fat content. But this feeling can only be discovered in detailed and intimate contact. If we really encounter him outside, I'm afraid we won't notice anything strange unless we have been in contact with Xiu for a long time. It's so amazing. Xiu looked a little excited, looking at Xiaochun with a very different look than before. This idea of combining the characteristics of elves with humans is really awesome. Xiu suddenly understood that the elf's ability was developed, and it was nothing to blindly follow others to learn and imitate. For example, he and Casey developed the application of superpowers to the brain, and there are also applications like Xiaochun that are different from the mainstream. Each elf has its own unique charm. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Adventurer of the Elf World. Author, Wu Nangkuang Song. Chapter 212. Xiaochun just stood there silently watching Xiu say strange words. His expression changed several times, looking very strange. How long can you last like this? Is there any impact on operations? Can I change it during the event? Can you imitate everything? Xiu was like a child who found a new toy, discussing the cross-dressing situation with Xiaochun. Although Xiaochun cannot speak, he can explain through body movements, and he is also very cooperative in demonstrating some of the strange abilities of the variety monster to him. These include lockpicking, disguise, portability, clothing, hang gliding and other messy abilities. It was an eye-opener for Xiaoya. He never thought it could be used like this. The young man came out of the emergency team's office and walked along the corridor, looking a little panicked. I had suffered enough in there just now, but fortunately I just jumped in line, and there was someone behind me who had records here. Otherwise, depending on their attitude, I won't be able to get out if I stay in there for a few days. It's all that man's fault. The young man looked a little resentful when he thought of the situation just now. If it weren't for that person. As soon as I walked out of the lobby, there was a woman in professional attire waiting at the front desk. When she saw the young man coming out, she scolded with a dissatisfied look, "I asked you to go get a meal, why is he missing? You still need me to look for him." "No, it's all because there is something wrong with the restaurant here." The young man subconsciously wanted to defend himself and shift the problem to other places. But the young lady at the front desk looked over, and this look made him stop again as if he was stuck. Just now he was arbitrarily blaming the restaurant, but now he was speechless and could only change his words, "It's all because of a lunatic who insisted on stopping me from getting food. Come here. You actually want everyone to wait for you." The woman also noticed this and pulled the young man out of the hall. As soon as the young man left the front desk, he complained to the woman, "Sister, I suspect that there is something wrong with the food in the restaurant here. Why don't we order food at an outside hotel like we did a few days ago?" But his words attracted the attention of another person on the side, who asked directly towards the young man, "What's wrong with the food in the restaurant?" Xiu and Xiaochun were slowly exploring the secrets of the human body and elves. Unexpectedly, a sudden loud knock on the door interrupted their research. Xiao Kungang slowly lowered her hand that was still dancing towards Xiu, and turned her head to look at the door with a cold expression. Although she didn't show it much, Xiu, who had been in contact with her for so long, could still feel that she was now highly nervous. "Relax," Xiu comforted her softly, "people from your organization can't find you. Stay vigilant, but don't be too sensitive." Xiu also clearly sensed the urgency of the situation outside and had already stood up and walked towards the door. "When I opened the door, I saw the staff of the Elf Center." "What's the matter?" Xiu looked at her eager look with some curiosity, and joked with a smile, "Team Rocket is definitely going to attack, right?" The man ran over in a hurry, but when he heard Xiu's words, he was even more breathless. He pointed down and said, "Your friend had a conflict with someone down there." Xiu's originally casual demeanor suddenly turned cold. There are only two people here who can be called his friends, one is here, and the other can only be Xiao Yuan. The moment Xiu turned around, his expression became relaxed, and he said to Xiao Chun with a slight smile, "I have some things to deal with, you first." But before he finished speaking, Xiao Chun had already walked up and raised his head slightly to look at him. Seeing her like this, Xiaoya could only shake his head slightly and said with a smile, "Then let's come together." Xiu took Xiao Chun down and saw a group of people gathered in the hall. The staff of the elf center were barely maintaining order. Looking towards the middle of the field, I didn't expect that this person was someone Xiu had just met just now. It was the young man who jumped in line, and Obara was standing opposite this man, arguing with him. But when the young man was standing next to someone, he saw that the person was tall, with particularly outstanding blonde hair. He turned out to be the star trainer Kiba. And he was accompanied by two bodyguard-like men in suits, and the other one was naturally the woman. In addition, there are some random people watching. The service attitude is terrible, the menu is meager, and the food is terrible and expensive. You can't provide any actual evidence at all. This is slandering the restaurant. Obaro looked calm and stared at the other party. What about the people at the elf center who imprisoned me for no reason? You must give me an explanation for this. Kiba had a slight smile on his face, and his exquisite makeup looked elegant and noble. If he was arrested, he must have violated the management regulations, and it is not within the scope of discussion. Fortunately we didn't eat. We still had diarrhea after eating. The young man followed Kiba and echoed, "I want to know right now how you came to the conclusion that there is something wrong with the food in the restaurant when you have never eaten the food in the restaurant? Isn't this a false accusation?" Xiao Yuan spoke clearly and logically, but the young man was stubborn and gave some random excuses, but he couldn't give a real reason. It's just that the man looked like a victim. The people watching the meal didn't know the cause and effect, and they didn't know who Obara was. In addition, the food in the restaurant was really pitiful these days, so they all pointed at Obara on the court out of preconception. Point. Especially, some of Kiba's fans on the field showed obvious verbal attack intentions, and the criticisms they made people uncomfortable. This person is so shameless. You can tell from her appearance that she is not a good person. This is a scam, trying to attract Kiba's attention. I envy her for being able to talk to him. She actually dared to offend Kiba, this bitch. Xiu, who was already a little unhappy, looked even colder when he saw this scene, and his eyes narrowed slightly. He and everyone else have been busy for so many days in a row. Some people are fighting on the front line, and casualties are happening every second. Some people are so busy in logistics that they don't even have time to eat. They work overtime for several days in a row and fall down at their posts. But what precious things are they guarding? Blood pressure is rising. As if sensing Xiu's emotions, Xiao Chun, who was following him, reached out and grabbed his wrist. Xiu's emotions fluctuated a little, and was pulled back by Xiao Chun, so he calmed down and controlled his emotions. He raised his hand and gently patted Xiao Chun's back, made a few gestures, and then signaled Xiao Yuan in the crowd with his eyes. Xiao Chun seemed to understand something, let go of Xiu's hand and swam among the crowd like a fish, and no one could touch her. Xiu glanced at the situation in the hall, his eyes stayed on a few people, and his expression became even colder. At this time, he did not rush up, but slowly stepped aside. Adventurer of the Elf World. Author, Wu Nangkuang Song. Chapter 213. Originally, Xiao Yuan, who was facing the crowd alone on the field, suddenly found someone approaching her. The two looked at each other and she reacted, her eyes sweeping back and forth among the crowd. She was not familiar with Xiao Chun, but she knew that Xiu must be nearby, otherwise the little girl would not come to her. She was a little excited, but she calmed down instantly. "What, you can't speak, The young man saw Xiao Yuan stopped and had a little pride on his face, and couldn't help but sneered. Places like your Changpan city have poor security, poor service, and the food in the restaurant is garbage. Even Rada won't eat it if it's thrown on the ground. But what greeted him was Xiao Yuan's cold look. The young man was stunned when he saw this, and the expression on his face froze for a moment, but he soon reacted. Looking at the other party's contemptuous eyes, his already fragile heart was directly shattered, and the expression on his face began to twist. Do you know who I am? How dare you talk to me like that? Humph. I do know who you are. With a sneer, Xiu walked out of the crowd, inserted himself between the two, and spoke to the young man in a sarcastic tone. Yo, isn't this the person who just tried to cut in line in the restaurant and was driven away by everyone? Why did you run to the toilet to eat because you didn't get any food just now? Otherwise, why would your mouth be so smelly? Xiu's eyes swept over them indifferently, with the corners of his mouth slightly raised, and the sarcasm was evident in his words. When the young man saw Xiu coming out, his anger was instantly vented, his eyes dodged, and he didn't even dare to look at Xiu. He was a clown, adding to the jokes. Most people on the field didn't expect Xiu to suddenly intervene in the battle. Especially his words went straight to the point, and the original victim character of the young man instantly showed a flaw. However, when Nakaiba saw this scene, his expression changed a little. The original halo of being high above was somewhat unsustainable, and the expression on his face was pulled down. My friend, please be more careful when you speak. What kind of Kiba are you? Oh? You are just a Kibashi who had no intention of considering him at all. He smiled even more and glanced at the young man. He said it's okay, but I said it's not okay. Don't be so obvious with your double standards. Have some shame. Xiu is not a law-abiding citizen like Xiao Yuan who cares about face. He either doesn't open his mouth or he wants to eat meat. Kibo may not have expected Xiu's joking, and he didn't react for a while. Instead, Xiu glanced around and looked at Xiao Yuan and asked. So, lady, can you tell me what happened? When Xiao Yuan saw Xiu appear, the corners of his mouth couldn't help but curl up slightly, and his temperament became calm, and his cold eyes were on the young man. I heard him say in the lobby that there was something wrong with the food in the restaurant at the Elf Center, so I went up to ask what the problem was, thinking that maybe there was something I could do to help him. Who knew that he couldn't tell me the problem, and he just scolded me and the restaurant staff. Even if there is a problem, you can't tell me. You are not also a restaurant employee, right? You will cover up for each other and bully us customers. The young man eagerly explained, raising his hand to point at the two people. Have you eaten the food in the restaurant? Xiu casually asked a question. The young man wanted to talk nonsense, but was stopped by Xiu's question. Of course I. The young man was about to say something to defend himself, but Xiu interrupted him and added a sinister sentence. You can check the consumption records here, it's not good to lie. As soon as he said this, the young man's words were stuck in his throat again, and he hesitated for a long time and couldn't say a complete sentence. Of course, of course. Kiba, who was standing aside as a background, frowned when he saw the young man like this, and said with a stern face and a condescending look. Not having eaten here doesn't mean there's no problem. Your service attitude is bad, can't he even point out the problem? Oh. You got kicked out for cutting in line, and then the restaurant's service attitude is problematic. Xiu smiled and looked at Kiba when he heard this. Then I hope there will be fewer and fewer such problems, which means that everyone is a civilized person with quality and will not cut in line. His words were sharp and full of sarcasm, but they did not cause much noise. On the contrary, those fans launched verbal attacks on him one after another, and the words became more and more unpleasant. Who is this person? Get out of here. What does it have to do with him? Why do you imitate him? You are so pretentious. Xiao Chun, who was standing quietly aside, couldn't help but look up and name them one by one with his eyes after listening to those words. Xiu seemed to have noticed something, and quickly looked back at her. When their eyes met, he smiled at her gently, and Xiao Chun retracted her gaze. When Xiao Yuan heard that Xiu was besieged, a trace of anger appeared on her stern face, but she knew that Xiu must have his own plans, and all she could do was to try her best to cooperate with him, rather than drag him down. Xiu seemed very relaxed towards those people, and had no intention of being affected at all. In his previous life, he had been in the mire, rat nest, and garbage can, the major internet holy places for many years, and these rotten fish and shrimp could not shake him at all. What's more, he is now standing on the moral high ground and has an absolute initiative advantage. Seeing those people protecting their master like a dog, Xiu laughed happier, which is the sense of superiority of human beings over lower animals. Xiu couldn't find it in the elves, but found it in them. When those people's emotions reached the peak, Xiu started to argue with them. You guys, how is the service attitude of the elf center? After so many days, you should know it. You know that in order to provide you with good service, all the staff who originally had holidays gave up their holidays and rushed back to work, and those who were already working kept compressing their rest time. On average, each of them has less than 5 hours of rest time a day, and some people in some positions don't even have 3 hours of rest time a day. 3 people have collapsed at their work posts. Do you know? But have you seen them complain to you? Have you seen them lose their temper at you? Xiu's words were thrown out by silence on the field, and the expressions of those who were watching the show became a little unnatural. On the contrary, the staff unconsciously straightened their backs. Some people wanted to keep a straight face, but they still inevitably showed a trace of weakness. Working under such high pressure is not something that ordinary people can withstand, and they have to bear the blame of those people, but they can't show it, so they can only suppress it in their hearts. Now that Xiu had said this, he felt somewhat emotional.